Hey guys, how's it going? We're back and entering our last week. Can you believe that? It's amazing how fast it goes. Jesus. So how you guys doing? Like cranking your models? Like Sarbs, by the way, I got your what's the name? Mother Teresa, right? Like, and I gotta take a look. I'm gonna reply. It's like I just have to find some more time to just like give you a nice feedback about it. It's turning out really cool,
Yes,
man.
yes.
You should actually share it in the group. I think people would like it.
Yeah,
I know
I'm
you.
little
I know you're a little
scared.
shy. Yeah, you're a little shy, but it's fine, man. Yeah, I mean, like those folds, it's like they're looking pretty cool. I would just like try to get like at the deepest part of the folds and really try to carve a little bit sharper in there. It's like just to add more definition. But in terms of the forms you have in there, it's coming along very nicely. You did a lot of work in
Okay,
the hands too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that I area also I got little closer that
Hmm.
those details.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to just add refinement. So
Hmm. Hmm.
let's see.
Yeah. So before we start today, guys, I think the intention first we're gonna be obviously gonna do some more hair today, right? Like gonna do some more guides and stuff. But I really want to update you guys on the shader network before we start, so you can have like the latest that's working for the old lady right now, and then at least we have something you can play with. It's like I'm gonna pass like basically like all the parameters I have. Let's see. Let's just share this right there. Can you see her right there? Yeah. Okay, so I was doing a render or a bunch of renders right before the class so I can actually test it just to see how it's working. And I think like for the most part, I'm happy with the way that the shader is turning out. And then the color, I did a lot of work over the weekend as well. And I'm gonna be sharing that sharing that screenshot. It's like those screenshots with you guys. I added some of the eyelashes we started last week, right? We had the bottom ones, so I had some the upper ones, and I added like this very long peach fuzz that kind of like gets this weirdness, a little bit weirdness to her, which is kind of cool. I can also pass like all these parameters and everything, including the eyelashes. I did some more work in the eyelashes. I didn't like the ones that we had that day, so I redid like the bottom ones, and I had this weird crash with XGen, and then I had to redo basically like I did twice today. And then, but the cool thing is that once I had the parameters set for the bottom ones, I just had to copy over to the upper ones, and then I got everything to look cool. So I got this one, I got this other one here. So it's like at this point it's very thin and kind of like a little bit blondie. So I'm gonna have to add a little bit more darkness to it. But for the most part, the skin is looking okay. It's like I think it's highly dependent on the painting, of course, right? So I'm gonna pass all the parameters, and then basically like if you don't have the tone of the skin dialed in correctly, I mean like you might get like some weird different results. But I think for the most part, you should get a nice result. So let's go over this stuff. And oh yeah, yesterday you probably saw this one. Posted this guy here. I did a lot of work on him yesterday because I needed to send to Pixelogic. They want to use for a little ad they have. Like I think it's online, just online, but I sent like a 4K and then it took forever to render the 4K. But yeah, that's out of the door now, so I don't need to worry about it.
Hey,
Okay.
Chris,
Yes.
did HD geometry ever killed one of your computers?
No, never.
Because I was working on actually my work computer, which was terrible. And I was sculpting normally. Everything was normal. And I think he went for a quick save.
Uh-huh.
And then I got a blue screen and my computer wouldn't load again. I had to like actually contact work and they sent me a new computer and everything, but it was pretty embarrassing.
Oh man, that sucks. Yeah, I think like the thing that makes ZBrush crash a lot is like either like lack of memory or like problematic memories if you have like like some modules that are kind of bad, or lack of space in disk. It's like if but even though that could potentially crash ZBrush, it would not crash your machine. It's like, so I think you got like a little bit of bad luck or a lot of bad luck, that you probably got like some problem with your disk. So it was kind of like.
If I
Sorry?
can chip in, actually, I'm pretty sure that's you fill up your scratch disk and you can change the where it is, so you have more space. Because when you are auto backing the thing, it does if you fill up your entire system, it will just prevent your system to do anything.
Oh,
And that's why
really?
you have a blue screen. Yeah, because you fill up
Oh.
Oh,
like priority or something. I don't know.
it actually killed my boot. It would not boot
Yeah.
from that after.
I got
Yeah.
I got the curved bootloader as well on the old a long time ago.
Huh, that's so
Crazy.
Yeah, it probably like filled up
I-
the hard disk, man. That sucks.
If you have
I
an
had that
SSD
same.
and something, you should like put the scratch disk on like a massive drive, like a
They had to
solid-state
send me a
drive
new
as a-
computer,
Oh
so it's
shit.
all good.
Yeah. Well, at least like they can transfer over like they can plug the hard drive and just clean it up a little bit and make sure that you have your files in there.
Hey, I didn't tell him I was working on my own
Oh,
project.
there you
I
go.
just said, shit just fucking broke.
Sneaky bastard.
I know, right? So let's start this thing here. So let's take a look at first, like, let's just upgrade you guys or update you guys on the eyelashes, what I did here. So basically, like, let me just make sure I'm not rendering anything in the background. Yes, I am. Look at that. That's why I got a little slow. So what I did, I actually started them using a roll that was a little bit below that one that I started on Friday. So I kind of like picked this one here. And now it's easier for me to just slide things up if I need to, than just like trying to open more of that. And I think it's kind of like overall, I think is in a good spot. She's an old lady. So probably like, I might have to make it a little tighter, but overall it looks okay. But in terms of modifiers here, I did a few things. So it's still very simple. You see like the upper and the lower just have like a few modifiers, not a lot of stuff. So I got my guides in there, obviously, like they're still there, right? So that's just a starting point. I got my guides around here as well. Okay, so I got those guys. But you see they're very long, right? But the thing is, like, I'm actually tweaking the length of it by using a couple of like modifiers in here. So, oops, not this one. This one here. So the first one, oops, I cannot break this thing at this point. Let's take a look like one by one here. So let's look at the lower eyelashes first. So I'm gonna turn off those guys here, and you're gonna see things getting a little bit more boring, like that, right? So without the guides, basically like that's the little guys in there. When I put the guides, I got like this length around there. It's kind of like all the same length, and they're very long because they're following the guides, right? Then in terms of like the amount of them, I added about 150 underneath in the lower part. So like 150, so that means like 75 per eye. And on the top is double that, so about 300 combined for both at the top. So now the modifiers I added a sculpt modifier in here, obviously, just to reduce the sizes slightly. You see like the ones in the corner in here and those ones in there, a little bit of a tweak. And then the scale is that basically it's the one that's actually adding a lot of variation to it. In the scale, I have this map plugged in here. So basically, let me select this one. Let me just show you this. So if you select, if you want to see something that doesn't have a shader network, for example, like the little mapping, there is just like a map that's plugged in there. Sometimes it's hard to find. So what you can do, if you find the noise in there, just say select. And then if you go to your hypershader, you can just say graph input and output connections. And then it pops in here. So you can actually have access to it. And then, so basically, what I did, I tweaked a few things here. So in terms of like the values, if you guys want to take note, I mean, it's recorded, you can pause later, but I'm using like a high frequency, like 400 in here. I switched to Perlin noise first, 400 in there. And then I tweaked like the frequency ratio and then all the other values in here to reflect those values, kind of like visually, it's like looking at how things are behaving. And then I got to this, this noise here. So this noise here, what's doing, let me look around here. Let me just close this one for now. So check this out. So once I have this one all set, then I can go to the color balance, turn on my alpha is luminous, and then I can play with all those values in here, right? So this one here, I can add like a lot of variation. For example, you see like some of them very tiny and some are very big. But then as you bring those slides closer together in size, you reduce that amount of variation in there, right? So basically, like this one is plugged to the scale. So I have like a scale node here for the lower, and I have a scale node in here as well. So I plugged like the same map, basically like for the scale for both of them to add this variation in scale. So you see some are very long, some are very short, right? But it's very random. So that added a nice little touch in there. And then I copied the same map, and then I plugged the same map as, because I don't want to be constrained, like to have this one map controlling everything. So I basically plugged that one into the width scale. So if I go to this width here, right? If I play with this one, it's going to be the same thing. So I have like those values around here. So like it's basically the same values, 400 as well. But then here, then my you know, the amount I'm using here is very small because I want to make sure that they are kind of like you know, thin. So basically, like if I bring up, then everything goes higher like that, right? But you see, some of them are being left behind because I have the offset in there. But again, you know, it's like you can play with offset and just get enough variation because it's important to have variation. You know, it's like have enough, you know, it's like thickness variation in there. So I did that one, and then that controls both of them as well. But you see, the lower ones are thinner than the top ones, right? So how I control that? Well, then I can go to the top node, this one here, and then open, sorry, this one, and let's get back to this one. So in here, instead of like using, you know, it's like the width of ramp, I'm basically using like a very, it's kind of like small for this guys here underneath. So kind of like the ramp goes up and down. It looks like this. Kind of like it doesn't reach the top, right? I can even make this one actually spline just because I'm OCD and make spline so it looks nice. So basically like this is the ramp for the lower ones, but the top ones, you see like this ramping here looks like it reached the top at 1, but in Arnold, like in XGen actually, and even in Arnold, all those numbers, even if you hit like 1 for some of those slides, you can actually keep cranking them. So for the lower, for the upper ones, what I did, I got to the scale here, like, and then you see what I did here? It's actually clamped over there because this value here is actually set to 1.2. So if I crank this one to 1.5, for example, see they got even thicker. So I'm using this one here to actually control the thickness of the top one individually. Basically like that, right? If I crank like, let's say like a 3, let's see, oh, let's put 5. Look at that. So he accepts like those very large numbers, right? So it's just a matter of like find like the sweet spot. In my case here, I'm using like 1.2. And then same for this guy here. This one goes a little bit like, this one is close to 1. So, you know, so just keeping that difference. But you see like now that I turned off some modifiers, the top ones have nice variation in there, but the lower ones are kind of straight, right? So the other modifiers I added for the lower ones, the clump. So the clump is a very, very subtle one, right? And I'm using basically like negative clump instead of like going to, you know, 1. That creates all those little bloop, bloop, bloop clumps in there. I'm actually going backwards because I want to separate them a little bit more. So go the opposite direction, so around 600 something. And then for the density, I'm using a very high density. Remember, like by default, if it's just 1, you get something very funky, right? So if you add a large, you know, density, you can actually get more control in like tiny little clumps, right? And then I have a noise modifier. So the noise, you see, like it just adds a tiny little bit. Basically, like my my settings here are based like 0.973, 0.478, 80, 885, and then it preserved the length a little bit, but I let a little bit of like almost like 30% of room in there to actually do some variation on its own. And then another clump on the top of everything. And this one, let's see if it's positive or negative, is also negative, another 300 something. But probably like with a different number here. So basically the density is 500 instead of 600. So basically like just to add a little bit more variation, you know. So just those guys without any additional sculpting already gave me a lot of variation in there, you know, especially the upper ones. But again, like I said before, it's all a matter of like how much you're gonna take care of that, like, and tweak them, right? You can still use a brush like this one, the clump, just use a very low intensity, and you can clump like two, you know, it's like every two of them, you know, it's like you can reduce some of them in size. For example, those ones look a little big. You can actually just like interactively just like paint them. But overall, they are working nicely, you know, it's like in the renders. Yeah, so that's basically what I did. For most of them, it's just like two clumps, one noise, sculpt pass, and then the guides, right? This one just has one clump. But very, very simple setup, you know. It's just a matter of like painting that little, nice little strip of polygons, making sure that you don't pick just one strip of polygons, just get two, you know. So they can go a little bit more like up and down like that. You see that my peach fuzz is a mess right now. I kind of like let it be like this, because I thought, although like sometimes it looks completely messy when you see in the viewport, sometimes when you render, that messiness actually looks more organized than we think, which is weird, you know. Sometimes if you just add a tiny little bit of variation, just like, you know, subtle, it basically like everything almost like looks straight when you render. But when you have a ton of variation, it starts to look a little bit more natural, you know. But I think I went a little bit overboard, obviously. And even for the peach fuzz, you see like there are some long ones in between in there. And this kind of stuff you can do, again, like using some noise modifiers as well. So for example, the noise in here, I plug the mask, right? So I have my frequency there. So if you plug a mask, depending on what you do with this mask, let's see, noise, this guy. So basically like if I want to have like this type of result, I normally invert the map, which is basically like using effects and then invert. Basically like that's what's gonna do right there, see? Got like white, all white with tiny little dots in black. And then if I want the opposite, then I just reverse it. And then what that does is that if you have this assigned, for example, to a very strong noise, for example, this one here, you're not gonna see, let's see if I can, let's see if with, maybe like with the wireframe like that, right? So, so if I turned it off, look what's happening here. It basically like it's preserving a lot of them, but it's introducing some longer ones, right? And the way I do this is just like add a noise modifier. I add like something like this, and then obviously those are my parameters in here. You have to find that sweet spot, this balance between those ratios in here, and also the color, the alpha gain. Sometimes you have to crank it all the way up. So that way you basically like create something that just picks a few of the hairs, and you can create like even like flyaways this way, you know, depending of, you know, obviously if you want more control, it's better if you create a different description just for flyaways, which is kind of like preferable. But just for variation of peach fuzz, for example, that's pretty cool. You know, so I can just add a mask with some of that. And then you can actually crank this quite a bit. You know, it's like the magnitude is pretty high in here. So if I go down, see like goes back to some of them growing and a lot of them stay in place. Only the ones affected by the mask are actually growing. So that can help to add a lot of nice variation, you know. So yeah, see the ears in here, for example, like all those little guys in there. So growing from this, right, which looks very, very boring, to something that's a little bit more broken up like that. It always looks a little nicer. So that's basically what I did for it. Now let's talk about this skin shader that I'm just like taking forever to tell you about it. It's just because I want to feel comfortable with it, you know, and I want to make sure you guys have something that's useful instead of like just me trying and trying. Again, like you see like that model I just posted yesterday, I spent like a day just like tweaking things, you know, so I can retweaking like the shader network and all that stuff. It's never over, you know. It's like whatever I do in here, I can show you like the result I'm getting like straight away from my render, which is basically what I'm gonna do. And probably like in the course of next weeks, I'm gonna be tweaking it still. So, but let's take a look. So for the base, let's just ignore this because I'm using full-on subsurface. I was telling someone in our group that if you are going for makeup, for example, if you want to put like some makeup, I believe like that's what I think. You know, it's like I don't know exactly how it works in the real world, but I believe like because it's a powder, right? If you're going to use some makeup, you're definitely going to kill some of the subsurface scattering, right? It's going to kind of like pancake the whole thing. You're going to kill that effect. So in that case, I would just like recommend, for example, using some diffuse channel. And then what I would do if I was doing like someone with a makeup, I would probably like, instead of like cranking the subsurface all the way to 1 in here, I would create like a black and white map, and would be a mask, right? So for example, like in areas where I want more makeup, for example, the cheeks or around the eyes or something like that, I would paint, for example, black in here, right? So it basically like, and then everything else would be white. So white would be full on subsurface, and then black would be no subsurface at all. And then you could modulate that, you know, it's like color correcting that map until you find a sweet spot where you have a combination of like a little bit of subsurface and a lot of diffuse in those areas, right? So you would basically like use this channel here to be able to accommodate whatever comes from the diffuse channel. But in our case here, just ignore that because we are using 100% in all maps. So it's gonna take in account just what's in here. So very quickly here, specular. I'm using that specular map that I definitely going to post tonight. It's going to be like I'm going to post the you know, some examples of the head with the texture, the albedo, right? And all the other maps. I'm going to try to post like little screenshots of the old lady, maybe like in two different angles. You know, it's like maybe 3/4 in front or something, so you can see the maps without any shader, right? Just like the flat maps. So I have this one plugged in there, and I have like for color balance, I'm actually, you know, as I normally do, just like seeing how it looks in the render and then compensating things here. So in this case, I'm adding a tiny little bit more exposure, just to crank the spec a little bit more. Instead of like having to go back to ZBrush and then repaint and then render again, repaint, render again. If you get something that's in the ballpark, sometimes I just leave it the way it is. So basically like using that one. Alpha is luminous as well. And then color is full on white. Index of refraction is 1.55. And then the roughness, I'm using the roughness map, which is basically the same bump height map, right? It's the same bump height map that I was using. Oh, actually, let me check if I create like a slightly variation of it. Let's see, bump height. No, it's different. Yeah, definitely different. Okay. I think I did this for my African guy, but this one I got the different map. So let's take a look at that. So basically, I have my bump height around here, which looks like this, right? Bump height map. And then my roughness looked like this. So definitely it's a little bit more specky. I think this is the one we contrasted here last time we're using the ZBrush, just like cranked it. But let's see if this is the actual map I'm using. No, actually, you see, I'm not, no, yeah, I'm using the roughness. Yeah, that's right. Okay, using the roughness map. And then this one I'm cranking to a little, actually I'm reducing some of that because apparently when I cranked this one in ZBrush, it went too far. It's like too white and too black. So I actually reduced the exposure by 0.2, right? So it's that thing, right? Just like I said, I mean, like I bring the maps and then instead of like having to repaint, if they are like overall, the paint is in the correct spots, then I can just like tweaking here to get the nice overall look. And then whatever is missing, certain areas missing, then I can go to ZBrush and paint just those specific areas and then just leave the exposure tweaks in here the way it is and just play according to what I'm getting in terms of render, right? You just like evaluate the render, go back and do the tweaks you need in the maps, and then that's it. So that's basically what it is. For the transmission, nothing, right? Because not transparent. Full on subsurface scattering at 1. The radius here, the color, I'm using like in my case is on like the output. This one here, REC 709 with color management, and then if I switch to the RGB values I have is like 0.878, 0.668, and 0.514. Right. So basically, like it's not at all too saturated, right? Instead of like going towards like a peach color, it's much more towards the yellow in this case, kind of orange, right? Because I didn't want to get that overly saturated subsurface scattering, especially like with the sunlight hitting so hard. I was concerned that it would look super red, and it always looks fake, right? So I think like this balance here, based like I said before, we get all that green tint in the subsurface, apparently, if you go too saturated. So the saturated is under 0.5, so it's like 0.415 here, and kind of like towards the yellow a little bit. And then I get like this nice little, you know, it's still red, you still get the redness, but it's not that fake super red thing, you know. It looks nice, and I mean, like there's no color correction in here. It's just like straight from Arnold, and it looks nice, you know. It's like I could definitely do some work, but so definitely like it's still gonna turn out like red, right? Because what this color is doing is actually remember like what they say in the manual, right? Like it basically like it splits everything, so it considers like the red channel to be like the most at the deepest level, right? And then the mid level, and then the shallower level, and then it basically takes that in account. And so it's always a combination. Like if you use a subsurface that's basically like kind of orange, which is normally what I used for a V-Ray back in the day, was kind of orange, never like towards red, always kind of towards orange, because it has to represent like an average of those blood vessels, and also it's basically like the blood and the fat tissue and everything combined in a single color, right? So as you can tell, I mean, like if the algorithm works nicely, which is the case of random walk, it definitely picks up the reds and everything, even though you have a map this color. For the scale, I'm sticking with the 130 for in her case, and I'm cranking the front scatter just a little bit, so like 10% front scatter in relation to the back scatter. It starts with 0, right? So if you crank forward, then you're adding some more front scatter, and if you go backwards, you add more exaggerated back scatter. So just adding a little bit more of this glow to the skin, you know. I like this kind of like if it's too plain, I mean, like it doesn't go deep enough, you don't see like the skin as flash, you know. It's like, so sometimes it looks a little weird. So, you know, it's like I did that in the past for some of the other models, and then I stopped using it, but I think I'm gonna use it a little bit again, you know. I kept it this way and I like the way it looks. It's very subtle. If you compare, it's just a tiny little bit more of this blurry scatter over the whole thing, you know. So, and then the color map, I still have that map, the color correction node that we talked about, we plugged in here, and I removed most of it. So you see like the saturation is back, and the contrast is back to what it was originally. The only thing I'm using is the gamma to be able to actually go, okay, do I need to go a little bit darker with her skin or a little bit lighter, right? And it's so easy to just do this adjustment, just to add a little bit more lightness in here. And then, so the tone is kind of like, I like the, you know, it's like, it's a little bit tan, but not too bad. You know, I still can go a little darker if I want to. And in that case, I think like that's the reason I painted a little darker in ZBrush, because, you know, but yeah, that's the way the map looks. I'm going to be talking about it next. And let's just go back around here. So let's take a look around. So basically, like this is the color correction node. I'm gonna go back to the model with to the map itself, the albedo, and then the albedo. It's basically like completely vanilla, right? Like there's nothing tweaked in there. So it's basically like my tweak is actually in the color correction node, which is just this little tweak right there. But this was after me going back and forth with my with ZBrush and really like trying to do a render, go back to ZBrush and try to incorporate whatever adjustments I did in here, kind of like eyeball a little bit, you know, so I can try to get like a ballpark in ZBrush. Okay, if I crank the gamma here by a lot, let me, you know, just like reduce, you know, or crank a little bit in ZBrush and see how it goes. And then just bring it back and doing like low resolution renders just to see like how close I could get. And then after like 3 or 4 of those, you know, so you can actually get like a nice ballpark. And then in that case, I managed to eliminate a lot of stuff, all those tweaks I did. I normally use this a lot for concepting, right? Just to get that ballpark, and then, okay, now I have a reference and go from there. But unfortunately, I don't have a formula like, okay, this is exactly what you have to do in ZBrush to be able to generate the same color difference, because those slides in ZBrush work differently from this. But yeah, it's always a nice little help, you know. So going to the coat in here. So the coat, basically, I'm using the specular map plugged in the coat. This one is cranked a little bit. Again, I'm looking at the model, how it renders, and then basically keeping my my render as progressive render, so I can get like fast iterations, right? I can even reduce the camera anti-aliasing here to something around like 8 or even lower than that. So I can get a nice result in there. And then, so basically like this is the same map that was plugged for the specular, right? It's plugged also in here. Let me just take a look if it's actually the exact same map. I believe it might be. No, it actually is a copy of it. This one is set to 0.070, and this one is set to 000, and then 1.3 in here. So it's the same map, just plugged twice, basically, in different channels. Also, index of refraction is 1.55. The roughness is set pretty high at 0.6, which I think is pretty cool for this type of like nice broad reflection in here. It's kind of like it adds this oiliness to the skin, right? So at 600, you get something pretty nice, combined obviously with the values I passed for the specular, right? So the roughness has to be adjusted in here as well, right? But we already spoke about it. And then for color is also like plain white, but in this case here with the color management, it goes down. So it's about, let's say 0.82. So it's not full white based on this color correction. But if I turn it off, it goes to over 1 in there. I just don't understand exactly how this works, because that's the only option I have to pick. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that I'm using, you know, this as aces, but I don't think it is. It's something else. I have to figure it out. And then, so this is the coat. And then let's take a look at the geometry. The geometry I tweaked a little bit. So I'm using the cell noise, right? That's the same one we used to plug this stuff using the alligator, right? But I tweaked those values in here. So I'm using like a 3, 1.5, 1, and then 30. And I think this is the default, 0.5 and then 1. And what I did actually create a brand new shader. It was just like a dark gray shader, and just assigned a bump map that I could try and just like play with it until I got like a nice little result that I like just to break up the surface. And then once I had that in place, then I plugged my the bump height, right, or depth, which is basically like this map. Here is the bump height, right, the one we saw. It looks like this. And so I plugged that one, and I think I tweaked. You see, like I basically reduced the exposure a lot, because you have to understand that the amount of bump is very, very delicate, right? If I wasn't using a map in here, I would probably be using a value of like 0.01 or even lower than that. So that's why you have to actually bring this down quite a lot. So I brought that map a lot down, like almost like 2. And then the alpha gain in here, I start playing with it. And then at some point, like obviously I could just like contrast it more here, go back to 1, and then reduce the exposure even further. But I think like I started like playing with both, and I landed in this value here that actually works nicely for my specific map. But definitely it's something that's going to be relative to your model. You're going to have to take a look. And then basically that covers, yeah, this, like I don't need this. This is by default, it turns on, but I don't actually need it, I think. So that's basically it for this for the shader, you know. It's going to be highly dependent on the color map. So the color map, like in my case, looks like this. I'm going to be posting again like screenshots of this, like front and probably like 3/4 or side. And it kind of like evolved, you know, it's like it still has a lot of that, you know, it's like noise, right? Like the very broad noise and stuff. But I just introduced like those little spots in here, doing everything with the mask. About the mask, which is very interesting. I mean, like if you're working in HD, right? And you're masking stuff, you're painting tiny little masks like this, right? Kind of like changing size. You see, like I just clicked by accident and it went blurry, right? This happens a lot. So when you click inside of it, it goes blurry. And this can be very frustrating because like if you're painting in HD and you click to in blurs, it takes forever just to show you the result because it's an HD model, right? It has a ton of polygons. So to prevent that, what you can do, you go to preferences and you go to edit. And there's this button here, click control to blur mask. So if you turn it off, now I can click like any, many times I want and never gonna blur it again. So that way I was able to actually paint a lot of those little dots everywhere with different sizes, right? And then some of them I decided to color a little bit towards red, some a little bit more towards brown, but always like in the ballpark, starting by sampling the color around, for example, here, and then just like going down slightly and then painting in relation to that. Same like going towards red slightly, right? Just like always a tiny little bit offset. You're gonna be surprised how little you need to offset to create those guys, this difference, and they're still very visible in relation to the rest. So be careful with like going full black, always like subtle with that stuff. Yeah, so, but we're gonna be talking more about this stuff as we go like the next couple of days. Also, this is gonna be showing you guys. So if I show you the details themselves, like in HD, let's see, I added some more stuff like, let's get those guys as well. Let's try to go HD on this lady right there. Let's turn this off right here. So a lot of stuff here I did like the past couple of days. See like all those forms on the sides in here, right? Like it's kind of like, it's almost like the forms start breaking up. And then they kind of like, before they get to the eyes in here, they have some other extra, it's almost like an echo of this stuff here, but not fully developed, right? So it's just like a little bit of that weird semi wrinkles, kind of like larger folds. And to do that, I normally go like to the lowest level of my HD, right? And then again, like I use this carve brush that I use for everything with a low intensity in a very big size like that. And that way I can just focus on carving those larger forms, basically like part of my secondary stuff, right? And then once I have those ones in place, then I go keep the same one on, go for example, like if I need to carve some slightly smaller ones, like those ones around here, I would crank to around like, I don't know, like 8, right? And then do the same. And then when I need to go like something that's very, very high res, like those little guys around here, then I carve with the intensity around like 19 and a very tiny brush, right? And that way, basically, like I can cover like all those things. I still have to erase a lot of those pores in here. They're still like around there. The way I'm erasing those ones in the cheeks in here is basically like using the clay buildup and just covering them up, but starting with going down a little bit, it's like go down the resolution a little bit and then just blend them. So just to eliminate some of that. And a lot of work is being done with also using like intensity, probably like around like 10 or something like that with the same brush. And then going over some of those pores and adding some direction. You see like just carving a little line on top of each one of them. And then going on in a bunch of them, even like in the cheeks around here. And you're starting to carve like that, it's like there's some direction being added. And this is gonna have to do like a full-on pass just to get more of those, it's like following certain direction. It's kind of same around here, yeah, it's just a matter of like how much time you want to put in there, right? Because it's all like manually carved. Potentially I can just like get this brush, stretch it, for example, in Photoshop, or even like apply to a plane, stretch that plane, do a little carving just to add some direction and just capture as a secondary pore that's like a stretch pore. I might have to do this. I remember doing this for Kong. I had like for Kong, there's even a video you can find online. I was sculpting his face, kind of like adding those little directions by hand as well. I think you can see in the video. But yeah, so very fun subject, because of the amount of different types of skin and detail, right? Like going from here to something that's very clean around the eye bags, right? It still has the detail, but it's very subtle. And then most of the stuff is just like those very well marked wrinkles without being without overpowering too much, you know. And then you have those very subtle forms around the nose in here. Those little guys in here, like very subtle as well, and then start to kind of like flare like in different directions until it gets to this area around here. Breaking up like surfaces like edges, right? Like try to add some wrinkles in edges so you can get that nice breakup in the specular when you look at the render. And then the thing that's missing for me is more lines in here, and finish this work with the pores. But I mean, like even the pores in here are gonna start eliminating a bunch of them. I'm definitely gonna keep them more visible around here in the brows area. And then around here, they're probably gonna start mixing into the tiny little lines, which I'm sculpting by hand as well. Like see like all those little guys, gonna add more of those. And then lots of those gonna start like going towards the sides of the face as well, right? But it's just like, it's a lot of, oh, and I did some more work in the lips as well. I added this little gunks in here. I have to add some texture to them. But then for the lips themselves, I had some more dryness in there and started like to carve in some lines, but still have to do more work. But yeah, so just like to show what I have so far, you know. It's gonna keep evolving, obviously, but kind of like her kind face. Yeah. Okay, so let's do some hair, man. Let's do some hair. Okay, let's go to let's turn off the vellus hair and then the lower and upper eyelashes. Before I do anything here, let me just open my my scene that I just saved before I start this class, because I messed up with some values in there just to show you guys like the noise stuff. I want to make sure I have my file intact instead of like having to backtrack everything, you know. So let me just reload this. Okay, now we're ready to go. So for the eyebrows, right? We're talking about eyebrows today, and then the full-on hair tomorrow. But the principle is going to be the same. We're going to be using guides as well. And then but for the hair, what we're going to be doing, we're going to use some masks as well. Remember, like my reference, she has this, you know, it's like she has areas here, it has a clear split right in the middle. And to be able to control this, we need to actually mask this whole thing. Otherwise, they're going to be fighting. Every time you have curves going opposite directions, the middle, it can go anywhere. It can go down and towards like the inside of her head, actually, and becomes a mess. So I'm going to be doing that. But let's start simple, right? We did the eyelashes fairly simple. The peach fuzz, which is based like mostly modifiers. There's not a lot either, so it's simple as well. Another thing I did about the peach fuzz, I redid it. It was to reduce this entire area here. So I removed all the selection for the faces, like for the under part, all the way to here, because I don't think you're going to see it. I'm going to cover her with some clothes. So it's just going, let's see, all the way there, right? And then I removed a lot of them from here. So I kind of like kept the focus around there. Removed them from the lips. Remember, I did it by mistake. I had it on top of the lips. So I removed this time. Side of the eyes as well. There's some very long around there in front of the eye. Look at that. They're so tiny though. That's another trick too, you know, before I go further here. You see like the scale I'm using for them? It's very, very tiny. Obviously you can control further by using the curve here. You can even reduce more. But I think like here, instead of like 0.02 that I had before, it's now 0.012. And make no mistake, the 1-2 is counted. It's just that Maya doesn't show it, but that's basically what I'm using. So it's super thin. It's the kind of stuff, like I said before, to look right, it has to be almost invisible. So you're gonna see, gonna be almost like invisible around everywhere, like that. But every time you go like against the light, then you're definitely gonna see some stuff. I think that's the right balance, you know. It's like otherwise you start seeing them everywhere, then it doesn't quite sell it, you know. It kind of like it becomes too much. So I think that's kind of like a nice balance. It's very thin. If you render, try to render kind of like a profile so you can actually see against the light. Otherwise, like a front view like that, you're probably not gonna see them. And then you're gonna be like, oh my God, I put all this hair and I want to compensate, and we're gonna just like crank this scale here, right? Just to be able to see it. so people can see the the work I did. But the thing is, like, it has to be just subtle enough, you know. In her case, not going to be subtle because she's kind of like a, you know, it's like I'm making her into this little creature. So I want to make sure that, you know, we have a little bit of this fuzz more visible, but still very thin. It's just that I cranked the amount of them, right? So first I put a ton of more. I think I put like 600,000 of them, right? 600,000 of them. And on top of that, if you go to the Velus base here, I double that density multiplier. So basically, like, this is adding like over 1 million of those guys to her face. And it looks kind of right, you know, it's like it doesn't look too much. I mean, like, it looks good from the profile and everything. Getting a little bit closer to what I see when you look at the reference, you know. It's just like, it looks like a lot, but they are very, very thin. All right, let's do some grooming here. So let's go to the eyebrows. And her eyebrows is gonna be a little tricky because they're very thin and the shape is not quite what you expect with an eyebrow, right? It's very thin. I mean, like, starts around here and then blends around here. It's kind of like you see this little dark area, right? And then probably, like, you cannot see because it's very low res, but she probably has some of them kind of fading away in here. So kind of like starting, like, the density starts going lower and lower. And she probably has some little flyaways around, right? Just a few flyaways, especially if you're older. It's so funny, man. I can look at myself in the mirror and start seeing like those crazy hairs growing in my eyebrows. And as soon as I hit like 40, I think, you know, it's like I start seeing like, oh, there is one growing here. And now I'm like almost 50, gonna be 50 next year. Then I see like all those crazy hairs, man, and they start curling, you know, it's like they're much larger than the other ones. It was like, holy shit. Yeah, soon I'm gonna be doing a self-portrait like this, you know. Chris Costa as an old lady. All right, stop goofing around. So we're gonna be trying to accomplish something like that, right? Obviously, I'm gonna try my best during the class to explain. So the method's more important than the result at this point. And the result is what you saw me doing this weekend, you know, it's like getting a model that I did like months ago and then going back to it and just like spending hours and hours to get it to look right or better, never right. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing with this lady. I'm going to try my best during the class so we can actually teach you guys all the techniques and everything, but then obviously it's the time you guys are going to put in it that's going to actually yield the best results. So let's go to topology for symmetry. If this is happening, is B is on, so B is for soft selection, so I'm going to turn it off. And then I'm going to just click the middle line. And then now we are all symmetric. So now let's just select a few of those edges in here. Or actually, let's go straight to polygons. So let's go to this little guy here and make sure that it's symmetrical, okay? And then let's go to face. Let's get a little bit bigger. And in her case, I mean, like, it's going to be a little tricky here. The thing is, like, you see, like, I don't have a lot of polygons, right? It's not like you can create like a perfect mask that's going to be, you know, perfect around that specific area in there. So what I'm going to be relying here is going to be like, I'm going to paint a larger mask, because one thing you have to know is that once you paint a mask like this and you assign like a hair description in here, for example, that's locked. So if later you try to incorporate, like manually add little hairs around this area here much further, it's not going to accept it, right? The only way you can open that area again is if you actually, at least like my knowledge with the interactive, is that if you export your preset like we did last time, and you re-import it by clicking the model itself and then re-importing like we did all those steps, then it basically opens up. So it's going to bring to the exact same spot where you had it. But then in that case, you're going to be able to, you know, click different areas and add stuff manually at that point. But in our case here, what we're going to be doing, you're going to be proactively making a larger selection than we need. So if our eyebrows are just like a tiny little things, like she has, very little, I'm still going to make like a large mask because I want to make sure I use this area here. And then I can use like a hair density mask in ZBrush. We can paint very quickly and then bring it back here. Because remember, like any masks at this point, since you're using UDIMs, like multiple UDIMs, you basically are not going to have access to painting interactively in Maya, right? Because it just accepts one UDIM. unless you do something like create a new set of UVs, you know, I think you can switch between sets of UVs, for example. But then that's a hello.
I've actually tried that,
Mm-hmm.
and it works, but there's some few caveat.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
There are some stupid shit involved. But basically, if you make a new UV sets, you cannot select it when you create your mask unless it's selected in a UV editor. Because there is a drop menu that only show one, which is the one that is stupid shit. But again, you have to know it. And you can't paint it if the mesh, and you can't create a map on the mesh you're trying to make the new description if the mesh has a shader which is not the basic Maya shader. So you will have an error that tells you nothing, that you can't create it. And I found out after too much time spending on that, that you just have to put a Lambert.
Yeah,
and it works. It is ridiculous, but it works.
Oh man. yeah, it's the kind of stuff like that's why I think like I just, you know, like you said, I mean, like if something that's consuming too much time and I know I can do in Maya in ZBrush just a quick mask, that's what I'm gonna do, you know.
Well, now, yeah, I've done it for you. Like you just have to know those stupid thing and do it at that stupid order, and it's not that much time because I ended up doing that. So I have one map to change all the density, and it's fine. It's kind of shitty because the debug it's showing you like a shitty, you know, the map you are painting, you don't see it. Basically, you're seeing the weird UDIM shit, but it does affect exactly like intended to.
Oh man. Yeah, that's the thing. Like you have to keep escaping from those traps, right? I like the suggestions from Google. Let's see. Complete guide to mastering Chinese dumplings at home. I never. Anyway, so let's look for example, like human eyebrows. Let's see, average number of follicles. Something like that. Let's Google it. Person has about 250 hairs per eyebrow. However, some reports show that never plucked eyebrows, as many as 1,000 and 100, right? Like 1,100. So we're gonna go for that old lady because she has just a few in there. I mean, let's like set up like since my area is much bigger than what we need, we're gonna be just masking stuff out. Let's start with something that goes like maybe like 800. And then everything else is going to be masked out. And if I need, I can just compensate that with density again. But I'm going to start with that. So like, let's start with 800 per. So that's going to be like 1,600 total. So it might be too much, but we're going to figure it out. So I'm going to, now that I have everything selected, let me just see if I have just that area select, just to make sure. Yep. Let's go back here and let's add a modifier. It's going to be, oh, sorry, I create the interactive. Let's do like eyebrows. And then let's see, 1,800, so a little bit lower than that. Something like that should be actually, let's see, oops, sorry, 55. So 1,655, that should be a good number. And then the length here, God knows, we're gonna have to figure it out. Let's start with 0.1. We're gonna use the guide, so it doesn't really matter. And then for the CV count, I would not go lower than 32. Probably like around 64 would be ideal. And because they're not a lot, you should be able to handle fine. It's gonna look very weird. It's gonna look bushy. Right there, right? Very weird. And it's everywhere at this point. So let's go with our create our guides. So let's do, before we do that, let me just assign a shader in here so we actually have a decent shader from the get-go so we can actually see them instead of like this blondie kind of thing. So Arnold shader, let's go to hair shader, standard hair, so right here. And this one we're gonna call eyebrows. Oops. Brows. Okay, and then we're gonna assign this to select the top node, right click, assign. So now we have those guys, which is cool. And then let's just add a modifier. This is gonna be a guide first. I'm gonna click the guide. Then scroll down, click create. So now I have a bunch of those guys, right? I'm gonna get rid of them. The only part that where I use the density brush is here actually, and I don't use as a brush. I just use it for flooding because I want to make sure I have absolute control over everything. So I'm gonna click this guy here. First, I'm gonna expand the guide, expand the in guide, expand the sculpt, and then click edit. So now I'm sure I'm editing just the guides themselves. Make sure you have to pay close attention to this because it's a recipe for disaster in the interactive. If you're trying to sculpt one thing and you have something else, click edit, right? So if you want to sculpt the in guides, make sure you have the edit selected for it instead of like the sculpt selection by default, which is for the main hair itself, the follicles, right? That's where you do it. This is for the guide. So it's a subsystem within the system. So make sure you have that one clicked. And then I can click this density brush here. And then under the tool settings, you can just select, like by default is increase, I think. You can just put decrease, value 1 or whatever you want to use. And then under flood, you can just say flood all. So now I got rid of all of them. So now, don't touch that again because this is a mess. This density brush sucks. So just use the place tool. It's basically like you're gonna place stuff manually, right? And I'm gonna make it very symmetric. So I'm gonna turn on object X, so like symmetrical. And now let's add some guides in here. So it's still like, I'm still under the guide in here, just gonna click. The first one is gonna be, I'm gonna have just to double check what's the positioning for her in here. It's got like, almost like, by default, when I sculpt the eyebrows, I tend to sculpt like little V's. Got like 5 of them on the top, 5 of them in the bottom. And then to create that pattern, but in her case, most of them go down like this. But I still gonna do the little V just to show you guys. So basically like what I mean is this. So I'm gonna start with, let's say 1 like that. Just again, basically like click this one here to groom it, right? Let's switch to symmetry. Let's just groom it a little bit like that. Right, you can do whatever you need. So you can even start adding some direction. So something like that, right? Just, this is the first pass right there. Now let's add another one. So click the add again, make sure you have that one selected. Let's click one around there. Again, groom it if you need to. Now, if you don't want to be bothered by this whole thing, you can always click this guy here and hide it. So you can always only have access to those guys later on if it becomes too messy, right? And because I'm using interpolation when I'm creating these guys with this, right? Interpolate, I'm going to try to place right in between them. So I'm going to go again, another one here. Oops. See, I have like that one selected instead of this one selected. And I just added a single hair follicle instead of adding a guide. So make sure you have that clicked. And I'm gonna click this one. And then add another 2 only, and that's it. So let's do another one here. Another one around there, right? So now I can actually just make sure they are a little bit more stretched. I don't want them to collapse in there or anything. Kind of like that. So now let's do the opposite. So click this little guy here, the freeze tool, right? Just gonna paint them. So they're frozen, I cannot touch them anymore. And now we're gonna go and do the opposite. So click the place one again. And then in your case, if you're starting an eyebrow, it would be probably like you're gonna start with this little V pattern. So this guy here now goes up. And then obviously around this area here, we're gonna start later changing the direction. So we actually start like, you know, but at this point here, just make things, keep things simple. Let's just add another one around here. And I'm gonna go up again. Make sure like you always go like from the bottom as well, so you can see how far it is from the skin. Then can paint it again. Go to the next one. Around there. You can do all of them at once, you know, instead of like doing what I'm doing, like put one and then brush. You can just place them roughly and then just go and brush later. Like I said, you can just, you know, turn off this and just like deal with those little guys first. I'm gonna place another one around there. Oh, see, I have that one clicked again. Click the guide, otherwise you're adding follicles and at the risk of messing up your system and breaking your hard drive. Man, that sucks. Break a hard drive, XGen. Okay.
No more broken hard drives. I can't handle them.
Right. Stop being too awesome, man. You're being too awesome over there. Don't do that. Keep things sucky. Okay, so
Lost
now
my progress.
so I have those guys in there, and then what I can do, like I said before, I can add a few more, maybe like just to help with the change in direction that I was mentioning here. For example, I can add one right there. And this guy, I can probably start changing the direction a little bit more towards straight. And then I'm gonna have to accommodate the top one right there. Kind of follow this a little bit. Start with that, something like that. Around there. And by the way, if it gets too crunchy, you can always use this smooth one here, this brush. Kind of smooths out the hair again. You can use a very low intensity if you want to, so you know it's like easier to control. But something like that. And then probably the top one now is gonna be messy because it's gonna try to interpolate like a T here. It's gonna be weird. So we're gonna try Control just to deselect those ones. And then let's brush this one up as well a little bit. And then slightly diagonal. Let's see what this is doing. Obviously, you're gonna eat up a bunch of stuff here, right? It's a large eyebrow at this point. So like it's very, very large, right? So we're gonna be eating up a lot of that. So in her case here, what I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna use a combination of things. I can actually start by reducing the size of those ones on the sides here. So just like basically like unfreeze everything. And then I'm gonna go to this length one. I'm gonna use a very low increment, 0.05. I'm gonna start like kind of like shrinking those guys around here. And at this point here, we are not controlling the density or anything. We're gonna use a mask for that. And probably like those ones right in the middle, I can actually add some more length to them. So it closes up a little bit. Obviously, in her case, it's very bushy, right? So in your case, that's gonna be kind of like the pattern you're gonna start with. But in her case, I'm gonna start changing the direction here just to accommodate my model. I'm probably gonna need an extra one around there, right? But in her case, I'm probably gonna need to go and mess up this. Oops, I'm actually brushing the hair and not the guides. Make sure you have the guides selected. The guy keeps saying like, don't do what I do, and I keep doing it. So I'm gonna bring down those guys here because her eyebrows look a little sad. So I'm gonna just move this down here. And then I kind of have to like freeze some of them to make sure that you know, I'm not affecting the other ones or anything. Start with something like kind of like that. So let's just add another extra one around here, or maybe around here, or maybe around here. Yeah, around there is better. Okay, so yes.
How are you deleting splines?
I'm just doing undo. I'm not deleting them. Yeah. Because to delete, you would have to use the density brush, and I don't touch that thing like at all. Yeah, I was just undoing, man. It's like, yeah, it sucks. I mean, like it's easy to delete with the core, right? Like with the XGen core, but with this one here, I mean, like I don't know like a specific way to delete the, like one spline, you know, other than using the density. That way it goes away, but at the risk of failing and then corrupting your scene. So now I have the sadness going on there. So let's start doing, let's paint a quick little map. So I want to be able to control, because remember, like I've said before, I can, for example, like get away with going back to the eyebrows themselves, adding a sculpt layer in there, and just like manually, just like reducing the length and also the thickness of each one of them until I get something that looks really nice, right? But in this case here, I'm gonna just use a mask just to try to speed things up a little bit. So I'm gonna go to ZBrush. Let's get out of HD. And then I'm gonna duplicate this lady here. So let's do a duplicate. Let's call her, let's see, hair mask or hair density. Something like that. So I'm gonna paint full black at first. Yeah, I think let's go, is it black? Yeah, I think it's black. Okay, so let's go full black first. Although I like to paint the reverse. So let's try to reverse it. Let's do RGB color fill object. So she's completely white now. Let's switch to black. And then actually the black's gonna be, gonna paint like smaller than I should, and I'm gonna blur it. So in her case, she has more, let's try to switch to this guy here. She has more of, oops, not this brush. Let's get rid of, see, standard. Let's get, in her case, she has, oh man, what am I doing here? RGB, start with the lower intensity first. So she has pretty much, this is like the bulk of her eyebrows, gonna be very, very small area around here. That's kind of like the bulk of it. So let's see, now that I have that idea, I have two options. I can either like really blur and bring this, you know, to spread a little bit, like kind of like in a very like faint way, right? Like almost like very, very subtle. Let's see, very, very subtle. Or I can use like a combination of the hair itself from the eyebrows. Remember, like I painted a very large area. So I still have room to transform some of those into like a very thin, you know, eyebrows in there. But then also I can use the peach fuzz and actually increase a little bit the thickness of the peach fuzz. One thing I noticed today, and I don't know if it's part of the new machine, because the only bug I noticed so far with my machine was the UV stuff, right? That it's failing to do the 3D, how you call that? Yeah, the UV, you know. But today I was actually trying to paint interactively the thickness of my hair, and it was not responding. I don't know if I had something clicked. I didn't like spend a whole lot of time trying to bug track it, but it wasn't quite working, you know. So I'm afraid that that is a little broken. And what happened is that it created that problem that you mentioned a couple of days ago. You know, it was like it seemed like everything was totally fine, and then I saved my scene. When I reopened it, was completely fucked. It was like pretty badly. You know, it's like all the stuff I was doing to try to fix the problem was actually being done, like, but the display was not updating, and then everything was pretty bad at the end. So yeah, there is that problem as well. So let's see. So I have just that little area. What I can do, I can add a little bit more of density around it, a little bit like that. But very, very simple. And then let's just try to, oops, is it blurring it? Oh, right there, okay. Let's get this. So that's gonna be like basically just a little area for my eyebrows. She's gonna look nice and a little sad. She's a little sad, like that. Maybe a little bit more. perhaps. Let's see. I'm using a very low intensity, as you can tell. And then if I need to remove, and I'm going to remove some more, but let's just export this one for now. And then this is going to be an easy one to do. Let's see, it should take just a second. So texture from PolyPaint, this one can be like a 2K map. Doesn't need to be I bet it could be like a 1K map, but let's keep the 2K. And then let's just export this one. And again, like this is the kind of map that you're gonna plug in there. You're not gonna see the results straight away until we start like actually playing with some of the alpha values in there, cranking things up, because you can see that right here in ZBrush is very, very subtle, right? So let's plug them straight away. I think you can get away with like a 1K. But okay, so now let's go to this eyebrow, and let's look at the density in here. So we have like our density multiplier, we have a density mask, right? As I go down here, it's like it's basically like tweaking the mask in there. So and I just click this guy here, then I add a file. I hate this double outliner in there. And then let's turn off auto generate textures, and then off. In this case, it could be on. I don't care. It could be on. And let's see, hair density, click that one. It's kind of the opposite right now, as you can tell. Turn on the UDIM, obviously. So let's see, if you reverse this, what happens? So color balance, and then effects. Let's go to invert. And then let's just crank things here a little bit and see what happens. Not this one, this one. Let's see, is my alpha gain working? Okay, so this one is adding more in there, but then this guy, okay. So maybe, let's go down. Oh, this one is not, oh, alpha is luminous, sorry. Okay. But this one's not affecting, so I'm probably gonna have to use a negative value here. Let's see, minus 0.2. Okay, so that ate a good chunk of it, so that's good. So with this one here, I can actually play and try to find a sweet spot, like 250. Actually, it goes lower, minus 0.150. Yeah, I got a little bit more in there. So basically, like you're gonna have to find like a sweet spot again to be able to define that. But then in this case here, what I'm more concerned at this point is if I'm gonna be able to sculpt interactively the thickness, because that's gonna be important. And if it's something that my machine cannot do, it's gonna really suck big time. So let's see, let's go to the guides again. And let's just try to clean up a few things here. Let's go to this guy. Bring things down a little bit. So one thing that really helps with the look of hair is modifiers, right? Like it's like you cannot get enough of them. Sometimes just a few help a lot, you know? So for example, if you start with something sucky like this, in the her case here, I'm still gonna need like some of them to change direction. So I'm gonna be playing, you know, maybe getting this guy here to change. Let's see. If I paint those guys, let's try to reverse this one here. Let's see what we get. Yeah, a little bit. Maybe I can add an extra one just like to start actually changing the direction a little bit slower. Because right now it's like this one is fighting this guy here, right? So they kind of like starting to fight. So we need like enough interpolation, but easy enough to just do it. So let's get those guys up slightly like that. Start to curve down. and then probably like get those guys again to go even further. Like that, something like that. And then we can play with some of them. Again, like if you click the eyebrows itself, right? Like instead of like the guides, and you add a modifier, for example, like a sculpt modifier, which you can add like as many as you want. Make sure you click the edit, right? So now if I have this one with edit, now it's not going to affect the curves, it's going to affect the hairs themselves. So if I click this one to place them, I can basically like put one by one. As long as they're inside of that little mask, right? Like that we painted initially, they should work fine. And those guys, we can make them tiny, right? Obviously, I'm going to symmetric here, so we can actually turn symmetry off and just like add a few like a little bit more asymmetrically. It's something you can do, you know. It's like if you're missing one, for example, around there, you can put one right there, like a flyaway, you know. Can really like do a lot of very manual artistic, you know, approach to it. So let's go to let's turn off the guides here so I can actually see what's going on with the hair now. And then let's add one single modifier here at first. Let's go to the top one and let's add let's start with noise, which noise is always good, right? Just by adding the noise here, just a default already added some more interesting look to it, right? So the noise, you can add like multiple different ones. You can keep one, for example, like with very low frequency and then very high magnitude, just to spread things out like that. And you can come with another pass, for example, that's more scraggly like that, right? So you can actually use a lot of this kind of, you know, combined efforts here with multiple noises. So I'm gonna try like, so this one here is the one I add a little bit more, you know, waviness to it, like that. So let's use one additional one, add a modifier, and then that's gonna be, this is gonna be the more broad one. So frequency very low, and then more magnitude. And then I'm gonna have to go back and forth between the two of them to see which one is overpowering the other one. Some of them are starting to crunch over there at the top. You can play with the, you know, it's like keeping the length as well. But some of them around there are starting to get a little bit funky. It might have to do with my guides as well, right? And but you know, it's like at this point here, since I don't use the density brush, what I do instead, I just like make those guys so tiny, the ones I don't need. For example, instead of like deleting stuff, which would be the function of the density thing, brush, I just like shrink them to nothing, and then I make them super thin as well. So they become basically like a little bit of a peach fuzz around it, you know? So that's how I normally approach those things. You know, at some point you can actually shrink them so much that they basically disappear in there. So I'm just gonna move this sculpt to the top in here. So actually any sculpt I do is gonna be on top of the, yeah, it's nothing sculpted just yet, but like it's gonna be on top of my noise, right? Although it would be more interesting, I think, if it's underneath, because I don't want to sculpt and basically counter what's in the noise, which is very weird. I mean, like if you counter the noise with the sculpture, once you turn off the noise, then you have the negative noise basically baked in there, right? So it's better if you can just like, oh, I'm adding, if you can just like play with the, oh, another thing, look at this. I'm sculpting and then the noise is kind of countering, and look what's happening there. It's actually making everything to break, right? If I'm moving stuff around and the noise is in there. So either you can actually turn off the noise before you do any modifications, right? And then if you go back, things should be fine. But if you get in trouble, for example, like if you're sculpting stuff and then you start getting crunchy like that, most of the time, if you just go to eyebrow, like the top node, and you go to your base, you can just rebuild it. And if you rebuild a few times, you should go back to normal, or rebuild a couple of times, like 10 times in there. So sometimes you're gonna find, you know, some of those areas look a little funny. And then obviously you can always use this guy here as well to actually make things smoother again. So, you know, get some of those guys a little smoother again. before the modification, right? So now that we have those guys in here, let's do like, for example, let's bring like this sculpt pass. I think I'm gonna keep on top just so I can fix some stuff. So for example, if I use a very broad brush in here, I can actually bring some of this stuff forward. Oh, I'm using the wrong one. Oh, let's see, what a mess. Let's turn off my symmetry first. Oh, there you go. And then now I can start like working on them individually instead of like working on the guides. You can actually work on those guys. You can use like a bigger brush if you want to, just like to get stuff to move together a little bit better. And this is actually on top of the noise, right? So I'm countering the noise, like I said. But sometimes if that's the intention, you know, it's like it's a good way to go. So the same way you did with the guides, you can now basically like mask everything. And if you want to work in just like a few of them, for example, you just unmask those little guys. And then you can play, for example, you can make like some flyaways with them, you know, it's like just like change direction. You can actually add a curl, for example, like you can curl this guy down like that. You know, something funky like that. Sometimes like old people have that, you know, old people like me. So you get a little bit funky like that. So at this point here, it's just like anything goes, you know, it's like it's up to you to how you're gonna approach this. Now, in terms of the thickness of everything, because I wanna make sure I can blend with the surrounding area, right? I wanna make sure I can shrink some of those, make them disappear completely or just like, but like I said before, like it might be a problem that I don't know if with the Threadripper, if this is another bug that I found, but before you do anything, you're gonna save the scene. I don't want to be at risk of losing anything at this point, since we are in our last week. So at this point here, you see everything is layered, right? I still have access to my guides. If I wanted to do like some broad tweaks, then I have to, you know, access to this sculpt layer that I can actually do like manual tweaks for each one of those if I mask the other ones, right? So a lot of control. I still have my noise in there. Even this guy's here, you can always like blend back to where you had it before, right? Like you can use the slides. So everything is, it's pretty cool the way it's planned, you know, it's like XGen is pretty brilliant. It's just very buggy. So now let's try to shrink some stuff here. I'm still gonna use the same sculpt layer. This is gonna be my main sculpt layer. And I'm gonna try to shrink some stuff. So I'm gonna go to this guy here, to the length one. Right, is that how it's called? It's length 2, yeah. So, and then I'm gonna keep this very, very low intensity increment in there. And then I'm gonna turn off my symmetry because I wanna make sure things look a little bit different from side to side. So I'm gonna start like, I'm gonna keep probably like this little flyaway all the way over there. Maybe it's kind of cool to keep it like that, or maybe not, but let's just shrink some of those guys here. I can do, for example, a whole lot like that. I can actually add like a general length variation using a noise, just like we did for the eyelashes, right? So I'm gonna shrink those guys around here quite a bit. But ideally, I would be able to actually change the thickness as well. And that's what I'm afraid of, that my machine is not gonna do it. And then it's gonna enter that weird mode that it doesn't show anything, and then as soon as you save and reopen, everything is there, and then you did everything blindly, and then it looks like a mess, right? So what I'm gonna do, let's try it and see what happens. So let's look at the overall thickness of the eyebrows. Click the top one, and then basically, if you go to eyebrow shape, that's the thickness right there, right? Looks very thin. We should use a little variation here for the thickness of it. So let's add a map right here. Let's go to the width. Let's do a noise. This is a noise from Maya, right? You can use like a noise from Arnold if you want to, but this is from Maya. So first thing looks pretty awesome, right? So I'm gonna just do, let's go to below, switch to Perlin noise. I'm gonna crank the frequency again, like pretty high, like that. So you get the very, very noisy surface in there. And then now let's play with the color balance alpha. Let's see how much variation you're getting. Yeah, some of them are going very thin, and some are preserving quite a bit of thickness in there, which is kind of cool. If you want to bring the levels kind of close together, you can always use this offset, right? But in this case, I want to keep the difference kind of the way we have. Something like that. And then ideally, I would be able to actually paint those guys here manually, right? And reduce the thickness even further. Oh, you know what? I know what I was doing. I know what I was doing. Because, yeah, if I'm using this based like at the top node, the width scale, what's going to happen is that's going to completely ignore whatever I'm doing with the thickness done manually. You know what I mean? So basically, like if I have this, for example, 0.01 that I had before, let's try 0.15, something like that. Now I bet if I sculpt this with a thickness, it's going to be fine. See, it's because I had a map before plugged in there, and in that case, it's going to overwrite everything. So let's try this again. I'm going to use like global. Yeah, so now I can actually shrink those little guys manually. Yeah, with the map, it's pretty cool because you can add all that variation, but at the same time, maybe a little bit too strong, huh? Let's see, less intensity like that. Yeah, so now to approach that, let's see if there's a way I can add a different map that I can use it has controls for the width, because I know we have modifiers. Yes.
Is there no width modifier?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a scale modifier, but I don't think there's a width modifier. I thought you could have.
Because I think I saw somebody using noise, and he was using noise with some script line in it to control the scale.
But that's all like under the core version of XGen, you know. Not the interactive. Every time you see like scripts and like numeric stuff, is normally like people are using the core. Now, what I did in the past was actually to create this variation manually, which can be a little painful, but maybe not so much. Let's try to do something here. Let's just adjust the overall shape of the hair first. So since this is like full-grown hair, they shouldn't have like a square tip like that. That would happen if you're, you know, just like clipping things, right? So let's incorporate a little bit of, so reduce the root a little bit. Like I said before, probably not the thing that happens like in real life, but in terms of transition, when you look in the renders, it's always better when you look a little bit, starts a little smaller like this for the root itself. And then you grow into the hair. And then you go down so you can get like a nice little tip right there, right? So kind of like you can create a little bit of that curvature like that. Now for this guy, let's see, where is it? So for this guy here, if you look at the way I have set up his beard, what I did that was different in here, you're probably not going to notice that much, but they have a lot of noise going on in there. And by that, I mean the thickness itself here, I added, in his case, stuff like this. And I went pretty, you know, it's like sometimes like not very subtle. I had a lot of zigzagging, you know, stuff like that to create a little bit of variation to the thickness. You see, like it's almost like they start getting a little bit more twisted. So that kind of added a little bit more of an interesting, different type of specular running over them, just by creating this kind of zigzag, you know. So it's your option, you know. It's like if you want to create something that's a little bit more straight, or if you want to try something like this, you know, that might have been like too much. So let me just eliminate a few of them. Something like that. And then maybe like in certain areas, I keep a little bit closer together, because I'm kind of not liking those ones in there, but overall, this added an interesting look to his hair specifically. So maybe in her case, gonna keep a little bit more simplified, still add it, but maybe a little bit more simplified, or maybe less variation overall, like that. Yeah, just a little bit, so it kind of looks a little bit more, you know, broken in a way, like split or whatever. So now in this case here, we have our hairs. So what I was saying is this. So for example, if you have an overall look for the hair, it's interesting. I'm kind of liking what I had before. I'm just gonna blend this like halfway and then create another layer. So let's create another modifier here. It's gonna be another sculpt modifier. And then in this case here, I'm gonna just select a few of those guys. Gonna go with a brush very little like that, very little brush. Click this little, you know, it's like the freeze tool. I'm just gonna pick a few of those guys, maybe like some long ones like that. That one's too close to like that. And then let's get some of them in here. Not you, probably you, right? And then maybe you. And you've been selected. Okay, so now we have those guys. I can actually go to this one here, the width brush, go to the tools, tool settings, just increase the intensity a little bit. And then let's say max, just go a little bit higher like that. And then there's this option here, invert frozen effect. So if I click this one, now it's just gonna affect what's inside of this. So make sure that I have my, okay, there you go. So now I'm making them slightly thicker than the rest of those guys. I go like very high here so you can actually see. Oh, by the way, I'm using global or local. Yeah, that's weird. I think the twist in there. Huh, interesting that they are looking to do funky. It should be global actually. I wonder if it's that, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna try this sculpt underneath. I'm gonna try it underneath the noise. And I'm gonna turn off the noise just to do this. Let's see what happens. Still breaking. Huh, that's so weird. Let's try to, let's try to just like rebuild them a few times. Still. Now that's weird.
Is it the profile you've created?
It might be actually. It might be creating that that effect in there. Let's eliminate them for now. Let's see what happens. Because I mean, like I normally use a simple profile, and it normally works with something like this. It normally works. So let's see if that. It's still so bizarre. Huh. I don't remember seeing that before. Yeah, I still look, even with everything off. That's a little funny. Let's keep the way it was before. I wonder if there's anything else here that's actually countering it.
Is it maybe the strength on your freezing, maybe?
Let's see. My freezing should be, oh, actually, the freezing is okay. But we can try again. I mean, like at 100, let's see. Let's try to unmask those guys and then make sure it's 100 and just do like a maybe 1 or 2 so you can actually see it. So that guy in there. And then let's go to the thickness. So this one has increment small like that. Look at that. It's actually keeping the root in place. I wonder if the fall off is, nope. What is that going on? Filter back this root to tip magnitude, huh? I wonder. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so that one apparently was actually doing the trick. Root to tip magnitude. I don't know why I had this on. Yeah, that should do it. Okay, so this case here, let's do a few things. Let's grow some of those guys. So for example, manually, oops, invert. So I can actually grow one of those guys, for example. That went too far. And then just groom it. Not this guy here. So like you can definitely like style things perfectly if you want to. And then, but obviously in this case here, I still have to add my modifiers, my noise, and that's gonna probably like obliterate that one. And then if I try to fight it, it's gonna mess up. It's like I have to have this noise modifier, the sculpt modifier on top, in order not to fight. So now I can actually tweak it exactly like I want. So I still want to be able to actually add some more thickness variation, but it seems like I'm gonna have to find an alternative for it. I think I did in the past. I'm just not remembering how I did it. Because for the eyelashes, I didn't have to do a lot of grooming. It's just like easy to just add them. But in those guys, I need more, you know, a little bit more precision for sure. So let's just go with those guys, and let's just shrink everything around those areas. And we're going to start blending with some of the peach fuzz. So those guys, let's shrink them to around here. Let's try to shrink some of those guys around there. And then I'm going to reduce the thickness as well. My tablet's not quite perfect now. Like that. I'm going to shrink some of those guys, and then I'm going to reduce the thickness as well. Now that I think is going to work. Global. Let's go lower by a little bit. And then the minimum width as well, I have to make sure that it's like 0.01. So you can actually, if I keep going with those guys here, for example, that little guy, you're gonna see it's gonna totally disappear like that. If you have like a small value like this, minimum length, and then if you can bring it back to life like that, you know. But sometimes I just do that because I want to eliminate stuff without using the freaking density thing. So I kind of like just like shrink them and really make them super thin, especially in this area here. So those guys, and then let's get this guy like really almost disappear as well. Those guys a little bit as well. So you can do that. If you use the global one, you basically like it tweaks like the width of the entire hair. But if you use this local one here, you can actually control if you want like just the tip to look thinner like that. Right, so you can actually, I normally use the global because I want to make sure that the entire hair goes thinner. Like this guy here, for example, it looks a little bit too much. And now, so let's say, for example, like at some point you're happy with it. Obviously, our eyebrows are a mess right now, so I'm definitely not happy. But let's say if you're happy, because I'm gonna keep tweaking this later. Let's see, let's go to this guy. Oh, invert. Now what we can do is to start blending stuff a little bit more. So I still have to work on the shape and the direction and all this stuff. But then if you want to blend this, she still has plenty of eyebrows. I mean, like I'm going to have to remove most of the ones in the top. And then, let's see, some of those. I'm going to kind of like, and also shrink them a little bit. And this one. Because I really want just a little bit in there. So now let's turn on our pitch fuzz. Let's see what we have for the vellus hair here. So let's see if this is a good way to see it. Let's try with use default material. It's gonna be a mess, huh? Because I have so much of it at this point. Let's see if I can do something like remove the noise. Remove the noise twice. So at least we can see a little bit more. Let's see if I switch the shader as well. So let's do shader. And then let's just, for the sake of it, let's assign the same shader we have for the eyebrows. And then later I can just put back. Let's get vellus hair, eyebrows. Now I can actually see them kind of dark like that. So what I can do here, so over this little guy, let me turn on the noise. But I just don't want to counter it, you know. Just let's keep it off for now. Under the vellus hair, I'm gonna add another modifier. This is gonna be a sculpt modifier. I'm gonna click on it, expand, edit, and now I can actually go to town here because this is non-destructive, right? As long as it doesn't crash. I mean, like I can keep sculpting with it. So I'm just gonna make something like let's make it symmetric this time. And then it's just like grow some of those guys or actually make them thicker. So let's go higher this time, like that, just a little bit. Let's see if it's working or not. Yeah, there you go. So now they're starting to get a little bit thicker overall. And then you can pick a few of them, because now I have a lot of this vellus hair here. Let's get some of them to get a little bit longer as well. So let's get from here. And then get a little bit of more length. Especially coming from the top in here, this is a good spot to actually get more length to actually help to blend with the entire thing. Around here. And now I can actually just like start like brushing them towards the eyebrow, kind of change the direction just a little bit. There. Past I would have like much less peach fuzz, and now I have a ton of it. So it's going to be, you know, tricky. I have to control how visible they are. The fact is, I can control the color of the melanin by using another map. I can even use the same map, maybe, you know. And so I'm going to have to do that because they have to go from blonde to something that's a little bit darker around here. So I can actually use like a black and white map, just the same way I used for to mask the density of the eyebrows. But yeah, it's like this, again, like it's gonna be how much work you're gonna put towards that. You can get some nice transitions, you know, between the different types of hairs in here. Let's turn on this noise. It's gonna mess up the whole thing now. Let's see. It's a little bit much, but definitely adding some interesting stuff like that. Maybe my noise, at some point I'm gonna have to maybe bring it down a little bit. It's getting a little bit out of control. Let's see, this one, and then the magnitude here. Yeah, something that's a little bit less messy. Now, one thing we didn't do for the eyebrows was to actually add a little clump. And the clump, I mean like you can either add like on the top of everything, but I would strongly suggest to add it like underneath the noise. So I'm gonna just go to eyebrow, add modifier, and then clump. So let's bring this clump under the noise stuff, actually right here, right? Let's turn off the noise for now. Just concentrate on the clump itself, even the sculpture. Let's keep it like that, clump. Go to the density. Gonna put like 200 here, something like that. And then maybe less, huh? In this case here, maybe less. Let's see, 100. Okay. Less, 50. Interesting. I have to add like, probably like, it's gonna be a low number, 30. Yeah, 30 looks good. Just to get some of them clumped together, you know. And then let's try the noise again. The other noise. Maybe the second noise is getting a little strong. That. And then sculpt and sculpt. Okay, it's a good start, you know. It's like, it's the kind of stuff like gonna have to be poking around. Always like seeing what works better, you know. It's like if I want to control like the overall shape, I still have access to those guys, but you have to remember that everything else is piled on top of it. And then probably like tweaking one of them is not gonna do give you like the exact same result. You're gonna have to probably like, if you want precision, to just like turn off some of the modifiers and just tweak that one individually. But let's select, let's go back to the shader stuff. Let's do a quick render so we can actually evaluate what's going on in there. And then let's see, I have my eyebrows in here. I thought I named the vellus hair. So let's see if I can find it here. Right here. So I have to put back this guy here. Okay, so we have our peach fuzz back. And then again, the color of the peach fuzz, oh, you see like there's some crunchiness going on in there in the eyebrows. So I'm just gonna rebuild it again. Eyebrows base, rebuild a few times. Remove some of that crunchiness. For the color of the vellus hair, so basically like it's pretty blonde, right? Because I need to get that little peach fuzz look to it. So if I go to the shader itself, you see I have the melanin here set at 0.3. If you go to 0.000, then you're basically like completely white. So I'm adding a little bit of a blonde to it, like probably like it could go a little bit lower, maybe like 250 or even 200, right? But in the same way, for example, if I go higher here, it gets dark, right? Darker in yellow or darker in basically white like that, right? So with the map, I could potentially control this so I can get a little bit more darkness within this area here of the eyebrows. So since we are here, let's mess up with this, man. Let's see if we can break something. Let's just go to this guy here. Let's delete everything that's not necessary. Delete unused nodes. Okay, that cleared up a little bit for us. And then let's get, so we have the eyebrows, and then we have the vellus hair here. So let's just go to graph input output. So they are both here now. Let's look what we have here. So I remember, oh no, it's not plugged to the map. Actually, we need that density map that we applied in there. So let's look for that map. So let's go to eyebrows base. So I have this density masking here. Let me just click select. And then I'm gonna basically click shift, and then graph input and output. So now I have the three of them. So I have this shader, I have the noise or the map that we assigned before. I'm gonna use that same map to actually control the melanin, but I'm not gonna do it straight away. So I'm gonna create a duplicate of it because I wanna tweak it. So Control D, duplicate it, hair density. So I can just name this one, let's say file 280. Let's call it melanin color. So this one here, we're going to be assigning to the color of the melanin right there. So we're going to go out alpha, I believe it accepts, yeah, out alpha. So melanin. And then now let's see what we have here. So Fellow's hair, and then Fellow's hair right here, melanin's in there. So we kind of have to tweak this map because remember, like we cranked some of those values. You want to make sure that we get the difference between black and white in there a little bit more clearly. So let's zero this to like 1, 0, and then 1 here, or 0. So let's see. I'm actually using a reverse version of it. So black completely should go. Oh, I wonder if it's going to be showing in the viewport. I believe it will, right? Let's try. Huh. Yeah, it's the kind of stuff that's not showing in the viewport. It's going to be hard to judge that way. But basically, like in theory, it should work fine. You know, it's like if you have a map like this, you could potentially, you know, use to calibrate like the color of the melanin in here. But in this case here, I'm not going to bother with it for now, but I'm pretty sure it should work, you know. But it definitely, you have to be able to actually control going like from dark to light. But let's just keep like we had before. Let's try 220. And then let's do a quick render so we can see what we have so far. So eyelashes. And I didn't do any tweak in terms of the eyebrow color at this point. Let's see if you can just add a little bit of melanin randomizer. Just get some different colors in there. And then the redness, I'm gonna just bring it down like 0.05. And then the color of the eyebrows, obviously you can go like anywhere, right? But then the melanin randomness here, it should help to actually add a little bit more salt and pepper. But then if we need more control, definitely a noise modifier here can do the trick. And sometimes even like a map you can paint in ZBrush. For Stan Winston, I actually ended up like painting a map that was very noisy. So I had like a control, like precision where I want those hairs to be. You know, it's like, for example, like paint an area that's kind of like a whitish around here, and then, you know, it's like and then black around there. So you can do that and plug as a melanin as well. But in this case here, let's just see what we get. If we have something like, let's kind of keep like towards black and just like increase the randomness and see what we get. So I'm gonna have to test it. Let's do render progressive. Get this back here. Still thinking. Oh, there you go. Okay. Let's isolate that. It's a little thick and very dark as well. But as it refines the render, sometimes it gets better, but still looks very, very thick. So let's put it on the side like that. And then let's look at the thickness in here overall. Eyebrow shape. So it's at 15. Let's try 12. Maybe the density, you're gonna have to maybe like have more of them in there. Let's see if I break things too much, if I just like crank the density a little bit. But before I do that, I wanna make sure I'm saving this, right? Because I don't wanna be at risk of losing anything at this point. Try 21 here. And definitely like the shape I'm gonna be playing with it, you know, it's like she needs more a little bit more density right in the middle. Maybe like I can just like grow some of those, add a little bit more noise as well. You got a little bit too straight. Actually, let's do this right now because I really don't like to underuse the noise. You know, it's like noise is, it's very cool. It actually adds a lot of life. So I can, you see, like even here, it looked like it had enough variation, but then you render, it looks kind of like plain. So sometimes I like to really exaggerate the noise, something like that. And then when you render, sometimes it looks nicer, you know, kind of like it blends together. And then for the overall color of the eyebrows, they're very, very dark. And sometimes it looks very fake when it's too dark. Obviously, you're gonna have to add some variation in the melanin. But let's try sculpt, eyebrows. So melanin is pretty high. Let's bring it down a little bit, more towards brown. In her case, it would have to be like a kind of mid value. But let's see. Okay. I actually added a lot of melanin randomizer now. It actually added some whites in there for me, so that's good. A little bit more salt and pepper. But definitely need some more, you know, volume overall. Like it's almost like it needs a little bit more, more density right in the middle, I think. So let's just increase this density like overall and see if it gets too bad. So go to the base and then you can just put the multiplier here. Let's try half of that more, so 1.5. Yeah, those guys here are still looking funky, right? Like they are changing directions, kind of the right idea, but they're too big. So I'm gonna shrink them to almost nothing in there. Keep like very, very little. And then start blending things. But you see, like in terms of the amount of stuff we can do with it, I mean, like you have those options of using the guides themselves, which is basically blocking the main forms, right? That's going to be an exercise for tomorrow, right? When you start tackling like more complicated stuff. For example, like the guides work for the main forms themselves. And then you have like all those modifiers to add like general variations, but then sculpt modifiers, you can use like as many as you want. And each one of them, you can control different things. For example, ones you can change like the overall shape of the eyebrows a little bit. Another one you can actually use just to tweak like, you know, pick a few of them and add more thickness to a few of them. Then you can add another one just like for whatever it is, you know, you can definitely get a lot of nice detail in there. In terms of the vellus hair in here, you see like they're starting to blend, but they're so white, so pale, that's not seeing, you're not seeing anything. So I definitely would experiment with a color mask for the melanin to try to bring those guys up a little bit based on that. But that's something I'm gonna have to be trying, you know. What I can do here, let's just save this very quickly, so because I know it's kind of working. And then what we can try is to plug that map again, and since we have this now, see if we can get like to nail that, you know, the vellus hair with those maps, you know. Let's try that. I'm curious actually because it's not showing in the viewport, but I'm pretty sure it works. So let's try to go the last one here. And then let's go to the melanin, which is like very low in here, but not so much, right? Like this, we're talking about the vellus hair. So I'm gonna try to plug that same map in here. Let's plug from scratch. Got this guy. I'm gonna go to Arnold, turn off this guy. Then I'm gonna turn on my Mari, UDEM, pick the map in here, hair density. So let's see if we apply it straight away the way it is. Let's see what kind of result we're gonna get. So this is the vellus hair right there. So now I can see they're all kind of black. Let's try to isolate this a little bit. Let's get around here. They're definitely darker in there, but I mean, like, they're still very thin. And I don't know if we're gonna be able to see that much. Let's try. Because they're so thin, it's gonna be hard to see exactly what's going on. Let's do like as a test here. I'm just messing around. This thing is saved now. At this point, we're just testing. But let's try to go to add some more thickness. It's gonna look weird. It's gonna be very thick now. But at least we can see the color. Okay, so now we know it's dark in there, right? And look at what's happening. It's the opposite effect, right? It's kind of like yellow in the middle and then very dark outside. So let's try to reverse that. Let's go to this guy here, and now we know it's reversed. Actually, is it correct? Melanin redness, is that the one I plugged just now? Vellus hair, melanin. Yes, that's the one. Okay, so let's try to reverse this. Go to your effects, then evert. Okay, so now we got that big bush in there, and then everything else is going towards yellow and then white. So what we want to do here, let's try to level a little bit things here. So let's get the offset up a little bit. So instead of like being too isolated, and bring it up a little bit. And now, since we have something like that, let's try to go back to the thickness that we had like by default. Let's go to vellus hair, go to, right, not the base, go all the way to shape. And then it was like 0.012. Maybe we're gonna need to increase a tiny little bit of thickness, otherwise not gonna see anything. Let's try to increase to maybe like 118. Yeah. Now we should be able to see a tiny little shadow in there. But it's basically like, yeah, it's like, this is kind of like to show you guys like what we can do with it. You know, it's really a matter of like how you're gonna be painting your maps and everything. So you see like right there, it's still like a little funny, right? But you can tell that they are dark closer to the eyebrows. I could, for example, like expand this mask a little bit more so I could have a nice little blend in there. But it's just to show you guys like what it does, you know. Definitely like not ideal what I have here right now, but I was testing just to see if, you know, I can play with that. And definitely it's something I can use, you know. It's like, for example, like closer to her eyebrows, for example, get a little darker, maybe, you know, it's like maybe just slightly darker instead of like much darker. But like, you know, you can keep playing with that until you find that sweet spot. Yeah, it's gonna be hard now without that, but you get the gist of it. And then I still have my noise in there, but although I have the noise, the sculpt is actually countering it too much. It looks like it's very straight. Maybe I can drop this one under the noise here actually, but I don't know exactly what is gonna happen, but let's try that. Okay. Yeah, now it's gonna be a little bit more random. It was a little bit too directional before. But yeah, like possibilities, you know, it's like stuff we can definitely play with. In terms of what's gonna be different when you go to the full-on hair, right? Like that we're gonna be working tomorrow. The difference is gonna be basically those areas that we're gonna be painting to split things correctly, right? But in terms of the procedure, it's going to be kind of the same. You know, it's like you're going to block. Obviously, it's not going to be like a hack job like this that we just like put a few curves and it's all fine. We're probably going to need much more curves, you know, it's like to be able to accommodate, like to make like a nice design for the hair. Sometimes if you want something very specific, you need to actually add a bunch of guides close to each other and then make them come to a point, you know, it's like, so basically like the effect of the entire area towards like a, you know, towards a point. And then there's a lot of stuff you can do with the sculpt passes on top of it, right? But just to block all those forms, there's a lot of curves you're going to be adding to her hair, to her head, you know, to be able to do that. But for today, I think like what I wanted to cover, which was like give back like this shader network for you guys to start playing with. And then also starting the groom of the eyebrows. They're probably going to change a lot, you know, it's like not only like the direction, they're probably going to start going more towards this instead of like going bushy up like that. Probably going to blend more the color of that those little peach fuzz underneath in there. Blend more those guys here so they can actually almost like disappear, those little guys. And maybe I can add like a map just to have a nice control of the, you know, the amount of whites that I want in here. But maybe not, you know, it's like maybe I can just like bring down the overall melanin color. So let's see, Velu's hair. Yeah, I keep like, let's see. Oh, sorry, I'm actually working with hair. I have to go to the eyebrows, sorry. So the eyebrows, I think it's still too dark. She's probably gonna have like very, very, you know, kind of like old ladies brows, kind of like starting to fade a little bit. Have to be just a little shadow, you know, not definitely not like a super full-on eyebrow. Let's see if I'm actually in the context of her entire face here. Let's see if that's starting to work. Let's see that one, that angle. And then we see from here. Yeah, it's a start, you know, it's like, this is definitely something that you need to spend more time to be able to actually make this more interesting. And I'm definitely going to do what I did for Dick Smith, you know, it's like select just one by one some of those, curl them up, some a little bit thicker, some going to disappear completely, you know, carefully actually start like grooming them with the sculpt brushes, you know. Again, like the interactive X-Gen, I think is very powerful, you know, it's like because it gives you all this freedom to have like perfect precision, you know, it's like you can pick one of them or two of them, whatever you need, curl them the way you want, resculpt, you know, it's like treat each one of them as being a different sculpture. And think that the core is kind of like, it's more like a generic feel of it, you know, it's like it's not very specific. You can use masks and stuff, you know, it's like, but like I said before, like lots of formulas and equations, and you know, it's like you, instead of like just plugging like a noise map and tweaking it and seeing visually, it's a little bit more abstract, I think. But at the same time, I see people having much less of a hard time playing with the core than they have with the interactive. I just think that as an artist, you know, it's like the interactive is the way to go. But just because I understand the concept a little bit better, you know, it's like I know the limitations and everything. But I just like it, you know. And overall, I mean, like I didn't have other than this crash I had not a crash, this problem I had with lower eyelashes today. Other than that, I mean, like so far it's being pretty smooth. But tomorrow is the day we're gonna actually test this, right? Like by looking at the long hair and then see if we can manage to break it. But yeah, guys. That's what I had for you today.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. I have two questions actually.
Yeah, sure.
Small question. Yeah, in the rendering viewport, right? In the display, you said that view transform, right?
If I what?
You said that view transform on the display
yes.
settings in the rendering view.
Yeah.
every time I start Maya, it's go back to default setting. How do I save this? Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, one thing you have to do, I mean, like you saving, right? Like this stuff. I mean, like when you go to your color management, this is basically the settings I have, right? So I have like my ACES CG, I have my this one is the view transform I selected, right?
Okay. Yes, I got it.
And then I have those other two ones here as well, like the output transform, you know, and then everything after you set it up, you just click save. And that should save for the future, you know.
Yes, I missed that thing.
Yeah.
And another question is, how do I know the scene size that when I render, right, using the display card, it's saying out of memory. So how do I?
You're trying to do you're trying to do GPU render?
Yeah. I want to understand how this scene is calculated.
Oh man, it's like I think he basically
used to say that.
I think it calculates, like it puts together all the textures you have, and I don't know exactly what it packs in the graphics card, but I could not render. I mean, like the only scene I was able to render like with GPU was a very simple one I put together without a lot of textures.
Yes.
And then
and
the thing is, like, it takes forever just to assemble the scene before you can start playing with it. It's not like V-Ray that's kind of like, you know, pretty fast. I would not trust Arnold GPU at this point, because like they just came out of like beta, and I think they should still keep the label beta because it's kind of broken, you know. It's like it's not great. So yeah, I have a dream to have this thing like working like full on with nice graphics cards and everything. But at this point, man, because this machine is kind of fast, you know, it's like, so just having the progressive rendering here is easier to show you guys stuff like that. I think that's the main reason I decided to actually use this machine to teach this class specifically, because of this type of render, you know. It's like before I had to actually do an actual render, and you know, and now it's just like you can actually see the results kind of straight away. So it's kind of cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you guys have fun, like try the skin shader, you know. It's like that question you had about like the speck around this area that looks nice and a little broken in there. It's a combination of displacement, the micro bump that I added, and now we have the tiny little hairs in there. So all this stuff combined, it helps to break up that little surface and look a little bit more wet, you know, kind of like that. So it's everything comes together eventually, you know. It's like little by little you put like each map together. And then if something gets very funky, for example, like the micro bump is not working, and for example, like you're not seeing the results straight away, just like create a brand new shader, just like a plain gray shader, assign just that one as a bump and test it until you get like a nice, you know, breakup, like just small enough. It cannot overpower the pores, for example. It has to be something that breaks in between the pores, like the size has to be like, you know, it's like smaller than a pore. And then once you have that nailed, then you just like plug the maps back, you know, everything back and go from there. But it's a lot of work and back and forth, but especially lots of renders to actually get the results, you know. So there is no way out. It's just like rendering a lot.
Looking awesome, man.
Thanks, man.
Killing it.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, you never know where it's gonna go, but you know, so far I'm, you know, kind of happy. Yeah, I think she's gonna look cute.
I think this might be
the
best.
That makes me. Yeah, you go ahead.
No, I was just to say the skin looks amazing on this one.
Oh, cool, man. I hope you guys like, if you plug like a similar color, I'm gonna be posting, by the way, I already said it, but I'm gonna repeat again. Since you already got all the settings, if you get like a color that's a little bit in this ballpark here, if you're using the same color modifiers and everything I'm using in my Maya, you should get a similar result, you know. So definitely it's gonna be dependent on the color of the skin to get that result. But this skin shader is the one I actually brought to my African guy yesterday, and I just like cranked the specular a little bit more and everything. But I kind of started from this one, and it actually worked nicely. So yeah, I think it's kind of like going across different colors and stuff. So I hope you guys make good use of it. I'm pretty sure you will. Yeah. All right, guys.
Your works motivates me. So I sculpt and I reading a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I have done 3 times.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, like size of the pores, man, I'm still seeing like some people like making super tiny pores. And like I said, like when I was sculpting them, the best reference is not my work. Don't look at my work when we're sculpting it. Don't try like, okay, I'm gonna do exact. Look at those pictures I show, like the super high resolution pictures, you know, put side by side with your renders and see like, okay, it's like how many pores I'm counting in this square, you know, square inch in here. Maybe I need to reduce that by like 3 times, you know? So make sure like you always look at the real deal, you know? It's like my stuff, I mean, like I approached it very organically, right? I knew I would have to eliminate a lot of them, so I didn't care too much. But in your case, if it's gonna be a very visible pore and everything, like around cheeks, definitely, man, like just make sure you get that scale correct. Otherwise, it really doesn't sell it, you know? All right, dudes.
I've already redid them like 3 times, and every time I do them, it's like it seems okay in my head, and then I like zoom out, and then I'm like, oh my god, they're wrong.
Yes. So like before you do it again, right? Just do a small part. Don't do the whole thing. Do like just the cheeks, which is kind of like a little bit more stretched, but put like side by side at the same proportion. You know, it's like one of those high resolution images, and just like, okay, I'm gonna just focus in this tiny little area. And I'm gonna make sure that the scale is correct, you know? You can even bring in Photoshop, for example, like bring in Photoshop, like overlay the 2 of them and see, you know, it's like before you're going crazy with like too many of them. I've seen like, when I was sculpting, I said like, please don't go crazy. Don't sculpt the whole face before you figure out the scale. Sure enough, like people are going crazy and covering the whole thing now. And then I feel guilty because like, man, you know, it's like, I'm gonna have to tell you now to redo it, right? But yeah, it was not for lack of, you know, warning. All right, guys. Have a great one. Talk to you tomorrow. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.